part of the JPA. I can only tell you it would be a terrible, terrible mistake to try and make that move. And we have commissioners who are telling people, maybe it's time we got rid of the play school in the park. I don't go for that kind of intimidation, and I think that's what it is. What I want is for us to have a positive approach to a library that will benefit all of us. Not me, not you, but the future of the town of Atherton and the people around us. We have used other libraries around us and other facilities, sports facilities, civic facilities, for as long as any of us have lived here. It's about time we learn to share, we learn to give, and we learn to have the courage to move forward. I recently read something about Steve Jobs, and I hope he'll forgive me if I misquote him, but I want to give him credit also where credit's due. And he said something to the effect that when you hear voices of discord, it's important to ignore them and move forward and do what you think is right. And that's what I think we need to do on this council tonight, move forward with what is right. And I think that means we need to choose a preferred site subject to an expeditious review of SEQA requirements, not as a project that's already been decided, but merely as a preferred site subject to SEQA requirements having been met.
So thank you everybody, first off, who sent me an email, gave me a call, be it early in the morning, late at night, throughout the night. To me, being a newcomer on the council, this is probably the hardest thing that's come before us that I'm involved in. We had to make some decisions. We've made some hard decisions. But to me also, this is a very discouraging situation. This should be a very joyous occasion, joyous that we have the funds to build a new library which better accommodates our needs. But instead of dancing in the streets, it's become a very divisive topic in the community. Now, those of you who know me, spoke to me, heard me speak when I was running, you know I believe in accountability and I believe in consistency. I believe that's how progress gets made. For me, I started and stated very early my position on the library and my position on the new town center. It's still out there on my website because I want to be accountable. I want to know what people said I was going to do and what I believe. That doesn't mean I'm blind to changes in the community or changes in opinions, but it's still out there and for you to go see if you'd like to see it. Now I've tracked back, just like Jerry, through all the different council meetings, all the presentations, and the minutes. I've looked at all the emails that you've sent, many of which I've either called people or responded. And honestly, as I backtrack through everything, I am a little dismayed with the changes and the reverses that I'm seeing. The facts here are that our library is in need of substantial safety repairs. It does not accommodate the needs of our changing community. Our community is changing. The dynamics of our community, the demographics of our community are changing. Essentially, we have a one-room library that is unsafe. And we know it's unsafe, and if anything happens to it, then we are liable for that. For almost 2 years, there's been public discussion taking place on this subject. Comments have been generally positive for the project and positive for thoughts of moving the library to a new location away from the threat of high-speed rail, which, by the way, has not gone away. Everybody knows that. We're hoping it will, but it has not. And into a more pastoral setting. But caution was expressed, and expressed several times by Councilmember Lewis specifically. Several times she's brought up that the public needs to be invited, needs to provide good input. A commission was formed, as we've heard, and they had, in public meetings, there was lots of fanfare. The council charged them with doing certain things, and among those things, and I will not read them all because they are out there on the web, but I'm happy to send them to you, full community input, about the recommended location of Holbrook Palmer Park is solicited and proper studies of the site are conducted for council review. So for over 2 years, we've been talking about the library and the park. So it's not like today is the day we're just saying, okay, a bunch of people did some analysis for us and they met with us in June and September and said, surprise, surprise, it's the park. The park was talked about before we got going, okay? They were supposed to do some other things, and of course they're doing those things, okay? Now, the committee came back to us in June, and they more or less said, we're going to have 2 meetings. And by the way, we're going to have them in June, one on Tuesday, one on Saturday. They're going to be great, and we're going to bring a recommendation back to the council, and we would like to, hopefully, the plan is to have you approve it in August. And this council agreed that that was not appropriate, more time was needed, and in fact, again, several council members said, you know, it'd be nice if we could slow down the process and at least get another 2 months. And that's essentially what we've got. So we've asked for that, and the council and the committee has tried to do these things. Overall, I believe the committee has done what they have been asked to do so far. Now, I will tell you, I went to some of those meetings. I went to the Tuesday meeting after the Saturday meeting. And I can tell you, I'll tell you quite honestly, I was less than satisfied. I do think that because the meetings were 2-hour, 2.5-hour timetables, that all of the input that people were trying to give was not heard or it was rushed off, okay? You know, we have to understand that the consultants had a job to do. And you can also talk about, well, how many people actually attended those meetings? Well, the meetings were actually attended or advertised in multiple mailings, banners, postings, advertisements, and also put in the paper. So people knew about those, okay? They weren't always at the most opportune time. We had some in June. We said people are going on vacation, school just let out, let's have some when people get back. They scheduled it for mid-September. The fact that these were poorly attended does not render the committee's work invalid. And in fact, I'd have to say the poorly attendance is very similar to the fact that an email was sent to 1,827 residents and 200, now 300, have responded. That's about the same amount. I've taken it upon myself over the last few weeks to hear from many of the most vocal opponents who previously supported the library, some of which have, and some of which have always been against it, some of which were presented and had their names on proclamations were read at the last council meeting. And I called them and I said, tell me why you don't want the library in the park. Just give me 3 reasons. Some cases, people said, well, I didn't know what was going to be in the proclamation. I didn't read it. I just said I put my name on it. In other cases, people have said, well, I really just don't want to change. Many people said, I'm worried about the footprint. These residents have said, hey, look, if there's no real loss of green space, then for them there is no issue. Well, I believe that those conditions are a condition of my vote for this to go into the park, and I believe it's a condition that the director of the library system has recently agreed to. If the town says it will not be any larger than the building that's there today, which by the way, you can't build any field there because there's green space and it's surrounded by cement. That's our call. The size of the library is this council and this town's call. It's not the library, the director of the library association telling us how big we have to make our library. We can make it as big or as small as we like. Okay? And we have that condition in writing that we are dictating that. Others are worried that maybe the library will attract people and they'll be having all of these activities and events there, and it's going to infringe on our personal happiness there and other events that we may want to have there. Again, I've asked the director of the library system to please acknowledge that the library in the park will be our guest and as our guest will abide by all rules and regulations that the town has regarding any planning and scheduling and any other rules that we have with regards to fees, etc. Now, I believe very strongly in planning. I've often said so. Many of you who have come to some of these council meetings have heard me ask many times, do we have a plan? I don't like cutting up the park. Yet against my vote, the town has often approved cutting up the park for doing this little job or that little job, a hoop house and other things. I don't want to get into it. Now, a master plan requires decisions and approvals, especially from the major items and from the major decision makers. So if you bring in a consultant, and Jack, you were a consultant, the first thing you do, and the joke on consultants, so here's my humor, okay? This is what's the definition of a consultant? Somebody who takes your watch and then tells you what time it is, okay? And the first thing that they do is they're going to say, what do you guys got in mind, okay? So this council will be saying, this is what we want. I don't believe, we can lay down some rules now, and I think we may be laying down a rule now. The first thing we're doing is we're opening up space in this location to put a library in the park. That opens space here to do more things. It opens a new facility to do more things, okay? We're not Menlo Park. Menlo Park is doing a very major master plan, and it's very complex. They're relaying out their whole downtown. We're talking about a couple buildings. This is not major, okay? I would think that the five of us could sit together and finally agree, but we could be more than happy to have your input, okay? I'm not trying to push anybody out, okay? Now, unless there's any other really major, overwhelming issues, I mean, we can't stick our head in the ground, but I just don't see them. I don't see these overwhelming issues. And while there is a groundswell of new suggestions that may cost, hundreds of thousands of unbudgeted dollars to determine whether or not we want to have a master plan, and we've agreed to go have that conversation about what we should do with regards to city properties, in the end, the council is going to be making these decisions, okay? A survey is not going to make the decisions. You're going to hold somebody accountable for making the decisions, okay? I do not believe this is a reason to delay. Laws, yes, must be followed. If in fact, our council and the library committee council and other esteemed members of the legal community say that we're breaking the law, the city should not be breaking the law. Heavens knows we've gotten out of a lot of lawsuits thanks to the fine work of Mr. Connors, and we don't want to start inviting new ones. However, unless there's overwhelming evidence that we can't make a preferred solution, I don't recommend that we delay. Currently, as we pointed out, there's not really any money for a new town center. That's come up several times. I've spoken at several council meetings. I'm all for a new town center. Show me the money. Okay? And I hope we can raise the money, because some of the activities and some of the facilities we have here are deplorable. You can put your hand through the wall back over there. So I do think that there's something needs to be done, and something needs to be done very, very quickly. And perhaps moving the library out of that facility, making it seismic safe, will allow us to make some changes quickly until we can raise the proper money. But the main thing is that there is money for a library today, a new library, a safe library, and I think it's needed. But it's got to be a library that does not take any new green space, and one that will abide by our rules and regulations so as not to impact our livelihood. I've extensively studied this personally, okay, and I feel personally that the library in the park is a good location for a lot of reasons, especially mixing activities, the kids' use and things. I've spoken about those during the campaign trail, and I'm not going to bore you with that today. Okay, but I do believe it's that a library in the park is a good suggestion for not only Atherton today, but for the Atherton of tomorrow. I acknowledge there were mistakes made. Maybe they don't want to admit it, but there have been mistakes made. Sizing is one of them. I agree with some of the comments that Jack has made. But more work needs to be done. Now, finally, I'm sorry, I'm sure I've disappointed several of you here who may have supported me. or who may like me but didn't support me. But anyway, I acknowledge all the letters that you sent me, and I do appreciate it. I've tried very, very hard to find a win-win situation here, and I don't believe that putting more time between now and a decision is going to improve it and allow me to find a win-win situation. I think it will actually end up in a deeper wound, and I do believe it's time to go to the next step. And if you're disappointed in my decision, I'm sorry. I hope you give me another chance over the next 3 years to re-win your confidence. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. You know, it's very coincidental in my mind that all of a sudden we should be requiring a master plan. We've always pushed for a master plan, when in fact, most of the town facilities are going to be covered by the Town Center Task Force. When you look at what the Town Center Task Force is going to be in charge of hopefully doing, I mean, it includes the administration building, the police building, the public works building, almost all other buildings except the council chambers here, which I think needs a lot of work. So it just seems very coincidental to me that this business of the master plan should suddenly come up just as we're trying to make a decision in the library. I wouldn't say I'm suspicious, but I would say
Thank you very much.
it appears as if it's certainly one way to try to derail the decision on the library. Now, when I look at the library, I've talked to lots of people about the library. And it's interesting. The people that are in favor of the library in the park, they tell me the reasons why they're in favor of the library in the park. They go through them in detail. I have dozens of letters. The people that are not in favor of the park, when I say to them, well, why do you not want the library in the park? Do you want to go through something? No, I just don't want the library in the park. I would say that 9 out of 10 people I've talked to, when I ask them that question, say, I just don't want the library in the park. They give me no reasons whatsoever. They don't even want to talk about the reasons I've got. So it's very, very interesting to me. When I look at, as an engineer, of why the library should be in the park, first of all, a park site would move the library away from the train tracks and possibly high-speed rail. I know none of us want high-speed rail. We'd love to derail high-speed rail. But we've got Jerry Brown, we've got Obama, and we've got the unions all pushing hard for high-speed rail. I don't think we can discount high-speed rail. Apart from everything else, if high-speed rail should come through here, we're going to have a 4-year construction process and the tracks. And that would certainly impact the library, the present library, in a very, very negative way. If we decide to put the library in the park, it would be allowed, we have enough open space that we could make it go green, something the existing site would have great difficulty with. The library has the money not only for the building, but would be able to maintain itself and help with some of the park maintenance costs, despite what one of the council members said, that our funds, in order that we can create an outside place beside the library where library participants could sit outside, read books outside, so some of that would certainly help the park maintenance costs, and the park maintenance, the parking would certainly be helped by some of the library funds. The old library building would immediately provide much needed extra space for the town administration offices. And a library on this site had been envisaged by the Holbrook Primal Gifties. I'm not saying that we need to go with that, but one of their ideas, from what I can gather, including talking to some of the grandkids or nephews and nieces, are that they would have loved to have had a library in Holbrook Primal Park. The house that we have at present in the library, first of all, it's not a public house, it's not open to the public. It's certainly not historic, and it's certainly not an architectural wonder. I think if we placed a library there, just as Bill says, without taking up any grass, and I've personally measured it, and I think we can build the library there that doesn't take up any grass. It does take up some of the hardscape there. It wouldn't be any bigger, and it would be, I hope, and I'm sure it would be, it would look far better than that main house. It could be actually a beautiful building, which would enhance the library in my mind. Now, we talk about traffic. At the present time, the biggest problem with traffic we have is with special events, weddings, memorial services, 500 to 600 Google representatives there. When people go and visit a library, it's not like going to a baseball game where it starts at 2 o'clock. They go over the course of the day. I don't believe that attendees at the library, frankly, would make much difference to the parking. I think there are some things we can do that would certainly reduce the problems. I go there to the park occasionally. The last 2 times I've gone to the park, I couldn't find a parking spot. Why couldn't I find a parking spot? Because we had a special event. I think it was a Google, 500 to 800 people. We had a memorial service. Every parking spot was filled. These are the things that are taking up parking. In my mind, and this comes up later, weekends are the time when the citizens and the residents of Atherton ought to have the park to enjoy. That's what it should be. And therefore, you know, having weddings and everything else in a weekend that fills up all the parking spaces, in my mind, is just not an acceptable use. And the library money, as we all know, can only be used for library concerns. So in no way should it be thought of as town money. It is town money, but it's town money dedicated to the library only. Therefore, in the past, one of the gentlemen has been here already, there have been attempts to divert that library money time and time again into other things, such as the town center. We've had crystal clear definitions from the JPA that we're not allowed to do that. And therefore, I want to be sure that that's just repeated. There's no way that this library money can be used to help build the town center. I'm a very big proponent of the town center. I hope we can raise the money for the town center. I think it's going to be wonderful for Atherton, but not using library money. Okay, so I guess at that point, Kathy, if you want to make a motion.
I'd like to make some more comments.
Okay.
First of all, on traffic, one of the things I failed to indicate in my conversations with other members of the Joint Powers Board, statements were made that in every case where they've remodeled or built a new library, there has been a significant increase in traffic. I think there was something in the San Francisco Chronicle a few days ago about the San Francisco Library where they had a 50% increase in the amount of use. Now, on one hand, you can say that's great. There's more use being made of the library, but it sort of flies in the opposite direction. Is some comment about low impact. I certainly think that this has yet to be studied by the EIR report, but there's a gateway project, there's a possibility of a salt works project, there's a project that's been defined now for Middlefield Road and North Fair Oaks area. If one or any of these projects goes to fruition, it's going to have a huge impact on Watkins as well as other streets and roads in Atherton. As far as the teaser in the report says the prospect of leveraging the improvements for the library will include park infrastructure needs such as pathway improvements, crosswalks, traffic calming strategies, park improvements, landscape improvements, storm drainage, grand promenade, and event garden. These are all being characterized as being part of the library services that fit in the definition. I don't know, could you get that passed by the Joint Powers Board or not? There was reference made to a private, to securing an attorney for, on behalf of the steering committee. And I actually received an email that came from the attorney's office that purported to be representing the steering committee. And I heard tonight that our attorney, I think, was referred to the same person. We have one city attorney, and all, and if we think that we need to have an outside attorney, it should go through our city attorney to secure that. That's in his job contract. So I'm not sure, in terms of process, again, they're raising some questions here. Another interesting thing is that there wasn't a apparent meeting agenda where the report that the council has tonight was approved, officially approved by the library committee. There have been town residents that have attended recent meetings. So again, I don't know what the process is by which the steering committee had approved the report that was prepared by someone, and there certainly was not an opportunity for any public comment to be made along that line. As far as high-speed rail, both Senator Simitian and someone Jerry Hill and someone Rich Gordon, all three of these individuals who represent our area, Jerry a little north of us, are very much involved with high-speed rail. In early November, the High-Speed Rail Authority will be coming out with their new business plan, new financing plan. Simitian characterized this as a watershed event. That if it doesn't meet the expectations that have been set, that the project will be scuttled. And so we ought to know by the end of the year whether or not high-speed rail is going to be something that we have to contend with or not. If it's not, let's take it off the table. The main house today is 3,500 square feet. The library, as proposed, is 11,100 square feet. There will be a distinct difference in look and feel if the library goes to the park. And I think the suggestion of putting the administration offices in the current library building here, that can't happen until the thing is fixed up. So I'm not sure, where that idea came from, but it's certainly not a very feasible idea. So anyway, I'm disappointed that there is not more of a feeling of trying to bring the town together and taking more time and trying to work out a process by which we develop a community consensus, particularly in surveying the town about the use of the park before plowing ahead on this thing.
So I really, I'm very disappointed in Vice Mayor Widmer's approach and the mayor and Councilmember McKeithen in light of the tremendous outpouring of concern of residents in a very short period of time. I've always said that we need to have a greater discussion about the library, where it goes, what it's going to do at the park or here. It really needs a greater discussion. And somehow the other council members have contorted the idea of a master plan by saying that all of a sudden the Town Center Task Force wants to integrate the library into the town center. That's not what that's all about at all. The master plan idea has only come up, I think, because as residents started to hear a little bit more about the library, going to the park, they go, what? I don't understand. What's going on? What are you doing? Why don't you have a master plan? So what is the rush? Why are these other council members just laughing in the face of the majority of the residents at this point that have asked for a little bit of more of a dialogue? If it is such a great idea, then it should be borne out by further discussion. I just think that it is a severe misuse of the council's fiduciary responsibility to move ahead at this point in time, notwithstanding all of the hours the library steering committee has put into it. That's just part of the job. I mean, that's part of working on a public project, a civic building. It's hours, it's days, it's months, weeks, and even sometimes years. If you're going to do something that's going to have a long-lasting impact, why don't you take time to make sure that the majority of your constituents, the majority of your neighbors and your residents in town agree with it and will support it? Why would you want to do something that is so potentially contentious? I've even heard people talking about litigation. That's something we don't need. And I'm afraid taking that action tonight and designating the park as the library preferred site is just going to bring that on. I really don't want to see us go forward with that. I'm very disappointed. I think that the most prudent course of action would be to say, let's go forward with a CEQA report looking at all of the alternative sites, and let CEQA go forward in taking the library information and investigating the alternative sites, including the park, including the existing center, including the other lands that Atherton has. And then you can make better, sound decisions.
I think at this stage, I would like, we have an item 819 here, and I would like somebody to...
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve Holbrook Palmer Park as the preferred site for the new library to replace the main house, subject to meeting CEQA requirements as determined by LSA Environmental Consultants, and that we also move forward with revision of the park master plan.
I will second.
I'd like to amend that, if I could.
Sure.
I'd like to make sure that the sizing of the library is reapproved by the council, and then we get verification again that, you know, the 10,000 square foot house, the main house that's there is about 100 by 100. And the library should not be any larger than that. If they need to build up or size down, then that's what needs to happen. But it is our library, and that there needs to be, again, reassurance that adherence to town policies, including if we decide we're going to have the park shut down every night at 6 o'clock, and the library shut down every night at 6 o'clock. Whatever the rules are that the town has, that will be the rules that are imposed by the library.
How do you want to handle that, though? Well, you want to go on this first, then bring up another motion?
Why don't we say this? Why don't we say that we can vote on it subject to council approval, final specifications of the library. I'm okay with that.
That's fine.
I'd like to add an amendment. My amendment is that the town staff be directed to move ahead with a survey of the residents of town in terms of their feelings about having a library in the park.
We need to have a vote on the...
The amendment that takes precedence here.
There's a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? So now we can vote on the main item.
Mr. Mayor, before you vote, because staff will be the ones that have to unscramble this tomorrow, the motion, as I heard it, was approve the Holt Brook Palmer site subject to CEQA pursuant to LSA. Unfortunately, LSA cannot make determinations about CEQA. Only the city council and staff can do that.
Okay,
And
as
so,
determined by city council and staff, that's fine.
and so I was just trying to make sure that we understood that.
And then we move forward with revisions to the master plan of the park. And then add Bill's amendment.
And Mr. Whitmer's amendment would need to be voted on unless approved by the other two members that made the motion and seconded it, would need to be voted on before you could go forward with the.
I will approve Bill's amendment.
And I as well.
I'll vote for my amendment as well, and I made my amendment first.
I guess,
I'll vote for the amendment.
now we're gonna have a vote for the main motion. The main motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor of the main motion? Aye. All opposed? Opposed.
Opposed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Okay. I'm not done. The next item. Small world.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. I saw you there.
Continuation